Today on the Sane Estate, assessments, assumptions, and the moment the real estate bill shows up to piss you off. Welcome to the Sane Estate. I'm John Wolforth, just hanging out here at ICAM, talking to random strangers. Probably be here for the next hour or so, then heading back to my happy home. Except when the real estate tax bill shows up in my mailbox, then I just kind of want to move. Real estate taxes are one of those topics that everyone understands just enough to be upset about, and not quite enough to explain. We all know the bill arrives. We all know it keeps getting bigger. And we all know that at some point, someone must be responsible. But the system behind that envelope is complicated, layered, and governed as much by state law as by local choice. And when frustration replaces understanding, conversations tend to get louder rather than clearer. In other words, we'll be looking inside that tax bill machine to see how it actually works. Joining me today is someone who has spent years inside that machinery. Walter Hartford is a CFA and a longtime member of the Ipswich Finance Committee. He's worked with numbers for a living and wrestled with them in public service, which makes him uniquely qualified to talk about what's happening right now and why. I'm not supposed to drum on the desk. I do that every time. Walter, welcome to the Sane Estate.
Thanks for having me, John.
Awesome. Glad you're here. So I wanted to have you on because real estate taxes have become one of those really controversial issues in this town. Not just because the numbers are bigger, but because, in general, there's a lot of confusion about how we got here, why those numbers are bigger, right?
Definitely.
So, most people only encounter the system when the bill shows up, and by then, emotions tend to get there first. So today I'm hoping we can narrow this down a bit, or slow it down a bit, I should say. All right. Let's start at the beginning, wherever that was. When someone says, my property taxes went up, what actually changed? I mean, what are they really reacting to?
Well, I think they end up reacting to the dollar number, right? So in my world, in my day-to-day, you talk percentages, you talk dollars. Dollars is really what people pay attention to.
Right.
You say the market's down 700 points, but that's like 1%. That's not a big deal. Similarly here, my bill went up by $1,000. That's the number is the dollars that they see. And the dollar ends up being a byproduct of the rate, the tax rate that's set, the valuation, how much they say your house is worth. And those are really the only two drivers of what that bill is. That plus if there was an override. So periodically we've been asked to vote public safety building or things like that. So sometimes that can be the ugly surprise that finally shows up on your doorstep.
It is, but I mean, they voted for it, right? I mean, it's a majority rule. This is typically the way it works. And I would think that anyone who doesn't go to town meeting and had an opportunity to vote for it, they don't really have room to talk.
No, but I think to your point, when you open that envelope, that's not what it's not clear that that's occurred.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So it's more the reaction. It's more the reaction that's the problem, not that they don't. Maybe they do or don't know or weren't at town meeting, but it's more the reaction to the number, that physically larger number.
Which is, yeah.
Which is true.
See what it's like. What? What?
Yep.
Right. A lot of people talk about the town as, the decision maker, but I'm confused, like who does what, right?
Right.
The assessors, the finance committee, the town meeting, how do they all fit together, these pieces? Who does what and what, why,
Right.
how does it work?
Right. So the assessors are kind of like any other town employees, right? They're tasked with valuing all the property in the town. There, like you said earlier, there are definitely some state requirements as to how often they're revalued.
Right.
But conceptually, everything's priced at fair market value. So that's the ideal, and they're tasked with keeping that up to date. They can also, on a periodic basis, go through and look at an area that seems to be over or undervalued and kind of adjust the assessments on those properties. But the funny thing is, and one thing I always said on FinCom is it's a net zero game, meaning the town is going to collect an X amount of revenue on real estate taxes.
Yeah.
Them changing my assessment or yours just means I pay less of a percentage of the town's revenues than I did before, and somebody else is going to pay more. The number, the 50 million, whatever the number is in real estate taxes, is still going to be the number.
But that's funny you say it that way because it does sound unfair. It's like, okay, you're going to pay less, but I'm going to pay more. Why?
Hopefully, it's reflective of the value of your house.
So that's okay. That's the
so if they go down, they go driving down Argila or in my neck of the woods,
right.
They might say, okay, your property is worth more. Well, now my bill just got higher, and for mine to get higher though, somebody else's gets proportionately lower. That's just
because like you just said, you have to take a certain percentage per year from residents or from.
The certain dollars. I think we're going to get to it. It's Prop 2.5. So
right.
if you had 50 million, the next year is going to be 50 million times 1.025 to get you a little bit more. So that number is still the number that gets apportioned out to all the taxpayers. Okay. Based on how much their piece of the overall. So I think the number I saw it on the local news was $5 billion. Ipswich is worth $5 billion.
Really?
You have a piece of that $5 billion. Huh? Your piece might be smaller or larger. I don't know. And next year it could go up or go down. Your percentage of that, and your percentage is what drives your percentage of the tax bill.
That's a pretty good definition for your house being like an investment, I would think, because it's an investment in the town, the value of the town, right? Yep. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, if the town becomes more valuable, that's, in theory, it's the problem is it's hard for you to monetize that investment. But the house, and people have been here for a long time. I mean, their problem, they're living in a beautiful community. They've got a property that's appreciated.
Right.
Unfortunately, their taxes are reflecting that, and they may not have the ability to again have cash to pay that extra bill. But the house that they bought for 20, like my dad, I grew up in Newton. The house was $25,000 when they built it in 1965 when I was born, and now it's worth $1.3 million. Now the problem is my mother, doesn't have that much cash to spend because she's got a $1.3 million house in Newton. Her tax bill looks like our tax
bill is insane, or more or less for her. Yeah. And okay, so now you did mention Proposition 2.5, and yes, we're getting there. So it's like in plain English. I know you touched on it, but sort of give me an example of defining like what it limits. Like give a scenario, if you can give a scenario, like what it limits and what it doesn't.
Well, it really strictly limits just that ability, that increase in the revenues that the town can make without coming back to us and asking us for more. So that's why you see debt exclusion overrides for specific projects, or general operating overrides for, let's say, the schools or for the town to fund whatever they need. So back in, I think it was 1991, there was a garbage override because they couldn't afford, they didn't want to charge people directly for the trash collection, and so there's an override there to cover that for that 1 year.
Wow, so that's still the case. I mean, right? When nobody
it's in there.
Taxes
again. That's the funny thing is it's what people don't understand, right? So you do an override for $1 million. That 1 year, it's dedicated to whatever what they told you they needed it for.
Right. Okay.
Trash collection in this case.
Yeah.
The next year, that's in the pot of money that the government gets to spend. They may or may not choose to spend that. Now, $1 million becomes $1,020,050.
Yeah.
Becomes bigger, but they can choose to spend that money on the trash to cover the trash collection or on whatever else they do. So when I first came to FinCom, that's one of those things you don't quite understand. Wait, we did an override. Once it's after that first year, the money is at the discretion of town government. And I think we talked about that earlier. You have the town manager, an employee.
Yeah.
Right. Then you've got the select board, which is in theory, his or her boss, directing them on strategy and on how they want them to act. But they're still making a lot of day-to-day decisions. The town manager. Yeah. You've got FinCom, who oversees the budget, but really after it's been approved by the town manager and the select board. So we get to nibble on the edges and point things out, but it was harder for us to make actual decisions. That was a little bit of one of the reasons I feel I want to be impactful in my life and in my community, but I need to pick and choose how my time's allocated. And then, like I said, the assessors are just our town employees.
So is that one reason you stepped down, was you sort of felt like you were a little more limited in the power that you thought you should
power,
have?
I guess power is a word. It was impact more than power, because I think that you can't, when you look at a government, you have really two things that you do. You have employees that provide services.
Right.
And then you provide capital equipment for the town. So whether that be the municipal light department capital water department capital, buildings capital. So it's labor and capital. And where we're sitting here, and we'll probably talk about it later, we're facing a lot of those capital requests coming down the pipe.
Right.
And so it's harder to impact staffing sitting on FinCom. If the town manager decides they want to reorganize or optimize or whatever, they can do that. But by the time you get to the budget piece, it's the employee who's doing their best, probably a good job, saying, "Hey, I'm doing a good job," and you're like, "Okay, take your word for it." But there's not a lot of you can't have a lot of impact. And my time, it's funny, when you were young, you thought you had all the time in the world, and now it's more like I've got kids, I've got a business, I need to kind of pick and choose and do it based on impact and love for my family.
That's perfectly logical, and who wouldn't, right? Especially you did 9 years.
Definitely.
So, good enough.
Yeah,
More than I was being willing to do. So, unless people said, "You're awesome and we'd love you to be here and we'll pay you double what everyone else is," just don't tell them. You guys didn't get paid, do you?
No,
Yeah,
they didn't.
it's
And even the select board gets paid $700 a year or something inconsequential for the amount of time that they put in.
Yeah, that's not quite enough, I would think. Yeah, so that's it's funny. Our mutual friend Chris Doucette did cite human capital as being a major chunk of the budget,
and you add benefits to that. So it's the wages that you pay, it's the pensions and such that you provide, but pension, I guess, would fall into the benefit category. So when you look at those two pieces together, it's 90-something% of the budget. So again, if you're coming to FinCom after the fact with a people staffing plan in place, then again, there's not really that many opportunities to have an impact. More on the bigger picture capital stuff and that type of thing, we can point out, again, some of these times when people don't understand how something actually works. The wind turbines, kind of the same thing.
right?
Way back, they did this public-private partnership, signed a power agreement for the wind turbine, and then the wind turbine breaks, and then that limited liability corporation that owns it goes belly up, and now we're stuck with a turbine.
Who predicted that?
Luckily, I was not on FinCom at that moment. I can't blame me.
I can wash my hands of that one. Yeah, nothing to do with it. It's good.
But again, these misconceptions, a lot of times is what happens on where we are, where we got how we are, or what we can do to rectify it now.
Yeah. So I know a lot of these questions are sort of overlapping, but I think it's all important that we extract the details out of those, right? So when somebody gets their bill and they say, I know the rate didn't change a whole lot, but my bill is now ridiculously higher. Why does that happen? I guess is the big question.
Again, if the rate didn't change, then either your valuation went up or an override came on. Those are the only two things that can do it. Yeah, because it's one times the other, and then the override just kind of layers on top.
And we did talk about home value, and home value is directly impacted by the size of your plot, right? I mean, that's going to be part of it. Is it by the land or by the home?
It's both. There's a land component and there's a home component. And that's interesting. I don't know. That's one where enough to be dangerous type of comment. Because in theory, my property is probably more land value than my home value. I bought it 11 years ago. We haven't done much to the house.
So it's like...
So it should be highly land, but I don't think necessarily. I think the overall number is more reflective of the assessed value is reflective of the valuation. Although these days with inflation, who knows what it costs to rebuild your house? So maybe it isn't the current state of my house; it's what it would cost to rebuild it.
Well, that's a good point too, right? Like, say if you lost your house in a fire or something, right, and you have an insurance policy, but you've paid the insurance policy has given you a value of the home. And let's say it hasn't really changed, right, in year to year. I don't know how they actually calculate that.
Well, wearing my financial advisor hat, there are two types of policies, and you get the more expensive one, but the one that has replacement cost value, not the one that has as it is value, because that can be a rude awakening.
I didn't know that there was even an option, but I think we do have the replacement cost. Mm-hmm. So that's based on current.
There'll be a cost in the policy. At some point, they've said it's $300,000 for your house.
Yeah.
If you have replacement cost, it's going to be square footage, similar finish and that type of thing. But if you don't have replacement cost, then you're at the whim of the insurance company, and That's usually
No,
not a good
too bad.
place to be.
Yeah, I'm not really.
Try to avoid that.
I get that. I actually have a good contact who's insurance assessor. So,
Oh.
they, what they do. So, it's kind of fascinating, that whole business and how things work there, and all the little. There's a lot of play in what
More
you
so
can
than
do.
you would ever think. Whether it be pet insurance or home insurance, I've seen that run the gamut. Oh, we'll give you $1,000 to fix your dog's broken leg that you paid a bill for $1,500 for.
Yeah.
Then they come back with a second offer. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize this was
Well,
negotiable.
Is this like Price is Right?
That's how you feel sometimes.
It's crazy. Well, anyway, let me just think about this for a second. So, when people do get upset, it's almost, it's never really theoretical. It's like it's a personal. They take it as like a personal affront.
And there can be
right?
mistakes. So I talked to a local real estate attorney, and he brought up a case where one year they said that the person had 17 acres, and the next year they had it at 44 acres. Well, that's probably
Wow.
So there could be a mistake, right? So if you saw a huge increase in the valuation,
Yeah.
you could be what changed. So there is that. I think we talked, before. There is that opportunity to go for an abatement if something's really that wrong. That's kind of very clear cut, black and white.
Sure.
It isn't that my house went up by 4% versus 7%. That's going to be hard for the homeowner to really win an argument on, you're going to have to go through a process, and it's going to be it's not going to be easy. But if there's something really fundamentally, somebody that we know said our house doubled. Okay, that's unlikely that the valuation doubled, and if that was the case, I would be pushing back on that.
It's all that is. There's so many ways to look at it and figure it out, I guess. But look at it from this point of view, anyways, is like what parts we know. What isn't necessarily legally required would be something like the override. I mean, people vote on overrides. Mm-hmm. But the other, what parts are legally required versus what is just like optional otherwise? Are there any other things?
No, real estate. The funny part is real estate tax is fairly straightforward. Again, it's how much they're allowed to levy. Levies is the word.
Yeah.
And then apportioning of that levy to taxpayers. And so there are sometimes things where, like seniors, for example, if 2 town meetings ago, I think it was, they did something where a senior under a certain income level could have their taxes either taken away or limited. I forget which we did. Mm-hmm. But that money still needs to be raised. So that money is not being taken from somebody who doesn't have the means to do it and lived here for a long time. But now it's just being reapportioned. So it's really is that apportioning of the pie to whoever we decide. So you asked earlier, where's the town have some flexibility? There are certain areas like that, seniors being one, where you can do home rule petitions to change how, it's kind of like zoning. You can't change the overall pie.
Right.
You can a little bit change, and I think having one commercial rate and a residential rate is the other way. You can actually have different rates for different classes of property. We don't, but that is. So there are little levers that a town or city gets to move, but the overall pie is the pie.
Yeah, it doesn't get any bigger. It's just
it gets bigger by the 2.5% every year.
Well, okay. I mean, the pie does get bigger,
yeah.
but I mean, the pieces there's only so many pieces.
Yeah, definitely.
So if the pie gets bigger, each piece has to get bigger.
Yeah.
I mean,
And open space is another example of something that when you take something off the tax rolls, they're still collecting that pie.
Right.
If they have now a property that they get zero from that they used to get something from, again, what's left over has to effectively get reapportioned to you based on your percentage ownership in Ipswich.
Why me? What do you mean?
Well, us. I'm a resident as well.
Don't put my name in there anywhere.
Hopefully your piece is bigger than my
FinCom
piece.
Anyway, so who cares? Anyway, so yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, you hear this a lot, unfortunately, that a lot of the elder people in town find themselves being forced out because of the cost of taxes. And you mentioned that about your mom, and it's a terrible thing. But I don't really see any other way for the town to progress, right? I mean,
well, the funny thing is, here's another one of the inside baseball kind of things. you can defer, you a senior, can defer their taxes for 4% a year.
Okay.
I might do that in 2 years when I turn 62. 4% is not a really usury interest rate. It's, and yes, it'll cause a balloon payment when you pass for your
Right,
heirs,
but I'm dead.
but
Who cares?
That's kind of what I'm saying. So they can defer their taxes. I really want people to be aware.
This is
that
how I
that's
could
a-
bankrupt
that's
my
true.
miserable uncle. This is a good idea. That's it. That's fascinating. No, I had no idea that they could do that.
Yeah.
So that is.
And that's without, like, the thing we passed at town meeting was actually, I don't know if it was to defer, but I think it was to defray, not to defer. You can actually defer your property taxes, again, within parameters.
That's why don't more people take advantage of it? They just don't know.
I think there's a lot of, you get like there's a lot of things where people, sometimes they don't want to ask for something.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't want to be seen in a certain way, and sometimes they just don't know. And so at least in this type of forum, we get to tell people things that they might want to know.
That's the hope. Yeah. I mean, I'm learning, so I can't be the stupidest person, Tom. Right?
Probably
Maybe?
not.
Right. But all right, and we touched on this earlier too. But let's get into the hard facts. Is why is all this happening now? Why so much now?
Well, and interestingly, I don't know that we've even, I think we started talking about things more open. They created a strategic planning working group, and this was, right, Tony Marino was still the town manager when that first came out.
That was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, and they started talking about what are those big projects and what's the cadence of those projects, and kind of trying to ballpark what the cost of those projects were. And Jim Engel was kind of very instrumental in having been here so long, but being the kind of a good guiding force, and also still really good at Excel at his age, which is impressive.
Jim Engel's like the Yoda of town politics.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
He's an impressive man.
Raise taxes, you will.
And he and so they did that, and they came up with all the list, and they refined it, and it's become much a better. It's still an estimate, a projection, but it's become better at having everything in it, and they have a model where they can try to potentially, and I think one of the questions too was, they were talking about having a cadence at a tri-board where, do you want to try to put a cap on how much something could go? It could go up in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they're starting to finally have those type of strategic conversations usually at a tri-board level within their strategic planning working group, but then bringing it to the tri-board to have the broader, at least 40 people who all represent town in some either were elected or appointed fashion. So those tri-boards are very instructive.
So we recommend more people attend them?
That would be the one. That would be the of some of the things that, FinCom we rarely had anybody in the room. Select board maybe a couple more, but just really along the lines of what somebody's interested in. The tri-boards tend to be infrequent and substantive, so that's, if you were going to pick and choose, that's a way to kind of really see what the sticking points are, what the cross.
Yeah, you're seeing all of it
right
right there, right?
Right.
The holy trinity of sorts.
Yeah, and again, those weren't as frequent as they are now. So we've made progress. Maybe sooner would have been better, but the best next time is tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. That's it. That's exactly how people should try and look at it. But that's a good question. Talking about the tax burden, and it's we haven't really touched on the commercial aspect. So it's it just doesn't heavily shift the tax burden between residential and commercial properties. And why not? What are the trade-offs in making that kind of a choice?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. We're Ipswich. We don't really have that much commercial property.
This is
to
true.
Be frank, right?
Take away EBSCO, and what's left?
And EBSCO is less impactful than people think. That's another one of these. Until you start digging into numbers, you don't really realize what. New England Biolabs, and this is dated probably 5 years or so ago, paid 4 times as much taxes as EBSCO did.
And was that because of the acquisition?
No, they own a warehouse. How much do you think a warehouse is valued at?
That's interesting. Am I mixing them up with someone else? I was thinking of the whole.
EBSCO's the one right downtown.
No, I mean, New England Biolabs is or some other entity, because there was the whole concern about the environmental impacts of what they were doing over in the
They built an
expansion.
So there were a couple of things recently. BioLabs did an expansion, and then you had Waldingfield Road, which was its own.
Well, yeah, at Wallingfield Road. That
was
was
its own little thing.
That sort of died down. Why
It's from what I understand, it's done. The guy who owned the company is now going to keep it as a residence.
So they just surrendered, more or less, to the pressure.
Yeah. If lawyers and insurance companies, all these things. If you have enough of them, you can kind of.
So it's not a retreat or anything like that.
Nothing that creates additional jobs or revenue.
Well, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Those are some of the ones that drove you crazy on FinCom, because that was too much of a no-brainer for us to actually execute on.
That's mind-boggling, honestly. I mean, you would think that the people with the power would have pursued it because of that. I mean, if it's going to bring revenue to the town, and they seemed very environmentally conscious from what they were saying and what they were doing.
But the town's I think town power is an interesting phrase, because to some degree they don't really have as much power to make these on-high decisions as people think. When they do their best to make the decision that helps people the most, but if the billionaire with a bunch of lawyers, brings you to land court and can stall you forever, $1 million in lawyer fees on the town budget of $60 million is impactful. Back to you're too young for this. The FEFIs. It's kind of the same thing. The whole Little Neck thing.
I don't think I understand what that term. I don't know that
term.
So
Little Neck was sold as condos, probably right as I came here in 2005. But that was brought to a head because they finally needed to do a septic system, and you couldn't do a $10 million septic system when you were charging $1,000 a year for rent for waterfront property.
So they sold it off for the money.
Yep, and that's what funds. The school's getting about $1 million a year off that trust fund. So it's now it's actually being used for the purposes that it originally was set forth. Back in 2016.
Well, they wouldn't let a vagabond like myself pass the gate to go over there. I'm sort of curious. I mean, it's private property.
It's private. Yeah, it's a condo. Effectively, it's a condo complex now. But so back to commercial. There's not that much commercial. Jacking it up wouldn't necessarily be that impactful. Who you'd probably end up hurting is the small business people.
Yeah.
It's not EBSCO, and now they're in transition. They're going to be doing housing or whatever they're going to do with there. That's the latest I heard there.
But the other building?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I heard that. I saw that in a paper, I believe.
So they'll be doing something there. But EBSCO or New England BioLabs, they have choices, right? Some of them have properties other places. I think BioLabs is a good tenant and is kind of committed to the Ipswich campus with all the like you said stuff. So I don't think they're going anywhere. But you don't really want to just stick it to them. But 90% of the revenue is residential revenue.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read that also, that it was like very, very little. Like it might have been 13%, right? Yeah. But not a lot.
Not a lot. It's not. How much are you going to jack the rate to make that a meaningful difference, and what are the impacts? Because you always have to think, cause and effect. And again, the small business people are downtown. I remember I was on the community development plan committee, and it's like you want a vibrant downtown. Well,
yeah.
Jack the taxes on all your small business people and see how that works. So I'm not sure that I don't think that's necessarily the solution.
No, but that's an interesting question. I mean, were there ever any initiatives or discussions about trying to attract more bigger business to town, larger companies?
Discussions, yes, probably not enough action. I think a lot. How did you get where you are? Not enough action is the short answer. Whether that's on planning things, doing things over decades that weren't done, or trying to get, thinking about clusters, economic development, all that stuff. We had a couple of committees, but I don't think they were, in hindsight, active enough. Let's say that.
So, yeah. So what it comes down to, though, the bottom line is that we're looking at over $300 million in outlays, and this is our comeuppance. Yeah,
and I think we're going to, again, you talked about town meeting. I mean, we will vote yes or no on stuff, and the powers that be, but really the tri-board is defining what those investments are, and then we've got to decide on the yes or no and when are kind of the choices. So something comes in front of you, and eventually there'll be some fatigue
Yeah.
on how how quickly you finance $300 million. We talked about there's some hopefully chance longer term for infrastructure money. Maybe not now, but some of these problems seem to be not just an Ipswich problem, but a regional or national problem. So, is there a chance for that type of a solution?
Yeah, I wouldn't really put a lot of stock in federal funding these days.
No time soon, but again, I think if the water does, if climate change actually happens, who knows whether it does or doesn't? That can be the point of robust discussion one way or the other. But if it does, then you'll see impact. If there is, then there'll have to be a societal move on how do we deal with that. We're not Plum Island.
Yeah.
We're not falling off into the ocean.
No,
yet,
no,
but
definitely not. And that's an interesting point. It's going to be, fascinating what happens over the next 10 years, right? If we're both here to see it.
Hopefully, knock on wood.
I mean, we just get run out of town.
Yeah, one way or the other.
I don't know, but if a homeowner thinks their assessment's unfair, right, or they just don't agree with it, do they have any recourse? And
now's the time.
Now's the time to do if they do.
Between January 1st and the due date of the first of the Q3 tax bill. So I looked that up because I don't know that off the top of my head. That's
fair enough.
That's fine. But now is the time that you would be in the process of getting the form from the assessor's office and filling in for an abatement. And depending on how material, how big of a problem you think it is, I think that's something you might try to get an expert, not me, but it's like somebody who knows this stuff on your behalf. So when I talked to the real estate lawyer, he actually had sent this person to somebody else to try to do the abatement on the 17 acres versus 33 acres. So that would be big enough and material enough for them to want to fight it.
So as far as the abatement goes, what's the, we just said, so it's basically you have the only option is filing for the abatement. What sort of initiative, I should say initiatives, what am I trying to say? The abatement itself, what sort of factors go into determining if there is a valid?
So they have factors of which they say they used. The software is going to use certain factors. They have certain factors. There probably is some discretion. I mean, ours went up 20% a couple of years back, and I was like, whoa. Yeah. So I looked at every house close to me, right? So again, figure out is it me or is it everybody around here? And it turned out over a 5-year period, it was everybody around there. They ratcheted it up. So over a 5-year period, it averaged up 7%. That I wasn't happy with that, but at least I knew that it wasn't something specific to my house.
Targeted, right?
It was targeted to our area, but not targeted
you.
To Walter.
It's like, hey, Walter, see what happens when you
talk out loud.
FAFO at the town meeting. At FinCom.
So it wasn't that. But to some degree, those type of small, big to you and I, but smaller in the scheme of things are going to be harder to. But it also, if you're doing it yourself, maybe you fill in that form and see what happens, because there is a budget for abatements.
Yeah.
Every year.
There's
a line item.
Oh. No
so
kidding.
They may or may not use it, depending on whether people do the work and put in the paperwork. So if you really think something's wrong, you should try to do it. So an abatement will basically absorb the cost of the increase, or would it be a portion of it? You'd probably be arguing how much your house should be. So, Okay. So if they said it's worth double, it's probably not worth double. But it could go up or down. Arguably it's probably not going to go. They're not going to say your house is worth less this year than it was last year. But although in a down real estate market, you could ask for an abatement. So 08, 09. People should have been running in saying my house isn't worth $300,000. When I paid, I paid $350 for it. And now it's worth $280. I shouldn't be paying taxes based on $350. I can imagine, especially the people who are underwater, could have easily said, "What's going on here?" Right? Yep. I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, again, the rate is the rate, and so it still will be this big apportionment. But ultimately, you're an individual who has some degree of agency, and you can file the abatement. And if you do it and I don't, that's shame on me. Ultimately. Yeah. I mean, sure.
What is it, investment in time to go in and
Yeah.
apply for it? That's it,
Yeah.
right? You don't spend any money.
Yeah. Like I said, unless it was, again, if you're dealing with, you have a $5 million house and you think that the increase in taxes is going to save you 50 grand, great, you have a lawyer do it and yeah, you outsource that work. But for you or for me or for the average person, you can go in and fill it out and see where it gets you. And it may not get you anywhere, but again, you've taken that, you've tried to take your power and do something proactive with it. I'm generally a big fan of that mentality.
It's there. I mean, I guess, they say you can't fight City Hall, but then again, in some ways you can. Mm-hmm. In this instance, right?
That's your mechanism.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess with all these crazy, they kick the can down the road mentality and everything. So everything's sort of, the reckoning is here for all the expenses that we're looking at. Is this, and help me out, are we looking at a 10-year plan here for all these expenses, or is this 4 years? I thought it was.
I think there's a cadence. Again, stuff needs to be passed. If things don't get passed, so
it has to be, okay.
So a couple of things. Electric and water are a little bit different.
Are they taxed?
You pay it with your rate, and they basically include. Let's use a good word. Include debt service in their budget. Okay. So if they're going to do a big bond, they need to be able to cover that bond in their budget. So that's why people have probably seen this too, that their electric and water bills are going way up.
Yeah.
They're going up by like 8% a year or something like that. So that's the impact of some of this deferred maintenance things. And you won't really, if they had to bond more than a couple $1 million, they'd end up having to pass that through town meeting as well.
Is this happening already? I mean, I saw people complaining on Piss and Moan about the electric bills and the water bills, and I went and I looked at mine and I compared them to like last month or I should say
a year ago. So it would be
right, or like since the last 6 months. Yeah. Okay, but I mean, the reality was based on the kilowatt hour usage.
Right.
Was it value of electricity plus the value of delivery or cost of delivery?
Something, yeah.
Right? And if you did the math from like November to December, everyone was saying, no, it went way up. I'm like, well, there was Christmas, right?
You need to look at, like you said, the usage, right? So why I said a year is I look at December this year versus December last year. Yeah. And I typically am going to be using similar amounts of electricity or water.
That's
whatever.
A good point.
That in that time period, because that's when my Christmas lights are on, right? So then that's a high, hopefully you're not Galicki Farm and spending tens of thousands. But, so then is it really up that much year over year? That's, that would be the way to look at it. Or, constant usage.
I think I was just sort of looking at it based on what they were saying, like last month versus this month, right? Yeah. And if the cost, and I looked it up, kilowatt hour plus, like I said, the value, the cost of electricity plus the delivery, it was a little less than 22 cents per kilowatt hour, right? I did the math on my bill, and that's what it is now. Yeah. It stayed the same. So it's not, it changed a month ago to, from that to this. It's the same. It just used more. I had over 100 more hours of usage.
And once a year, you will see a change in the rate. I mean, on the water, you see a winter and a summer rate, as a way to kind of, punish the people who are filling their pools.
Right. So, but to your knowledge, has the taxes levied on these commodities, has that changed?
Right. Yes, they've been going up like 8% a year.
They have been.
Yeah. Okay. The rate has been going up.
But by year, but not by month.
Not by month. So the rate is a constant. The electric or water commissioners, the select board at this point, vote on those. The the electric light manager or the water manager comes before the select board. They have a hearing, public hearing, and they vote in the rate. And the rate reflects those implied debt service that may or may not have occurred yet.
Okay. So I know a lot of people probably think that, Ipswich is like unique in this aspect of what's going on. I think every town is dealing with a version of this. I mean, I don't see how they can't. Everything goes up, right? Costs go up. And we see what's going on in the country and how things are just the funding is an issue. There's, like you said, the stock market, the economy, all these things come into play. So, what's your take on like how we compare to other towns?
A couple things. First, just back to what we have versus other towns. We have a municipal light department. And
Yeah.
if you ever look, our lights aren't generally off for a long time, and no one's complaining about Eversource or whoever the the big multinational
National
company
Grid,
that isn't being responsive. So I think that is a benefit. And I think generally, from what I've seen in my past life at FinCom, the rates are relatively low from an electric distribution perspective.
I did that math too.
Okay.
Yes, and we are.
Okay,
We're
good.
like-
I'm glad what I said is true. I like
we're
that.
about 8 to 9% cheaper
Okay.
than National Grid.
Okay. And so that's what I thought. And then, we talked. I looked at the rates for all the kind of surrounding towns, and we're towards the lower end. I mean,
Yeah, that would make sense.
I think Gloucester's a little bit lower. Boxford's a lot higher. Hamilton's a lot higher. Ours is, this is 2026 is 1078. 1115 was last year, and Hamilton's 15. So $4 per thousand higher. So assuming that
Wow.
their fair market value assessments are relatively accurate,
Yeah.
it's $4 a thousand higher to live in Hamilton.
And I would think proportionately, it's not always going to be the same. Like you mentioned Gloucester being lower, but Gloucester's a much larger city.
And they probably do have a commercial rate. My guess with them is
They have more commercial. Yeah,
Right.
right. There you go.
so there's the offset that we don't have versus them. So it's like apples and oranges and pears.
Yeah.
Gloucester's probably is a different fruit than we are.
Well, there's a lot of things you could say about Gloucester, but anyway,
I'll leave that for you.
I am taking the fifth on that one.
But yeah, so we are towards the lower end of the spectrum of Beverly's in the same kind of bracket, but they have a lot of I work in Beverly. There's a lot of development there, a lot of business.
I saw that. I mean, every time I go to Beverly, they're building something, and then Danvers is kind of like that too. Like they built
Right.
that giant condo
Yeah.
thing on the corner there of Maple. And
Right, so it seems like the cheaper ones are ones that have a bigger commercial aspect to them. And so we, rate-wise, seem to be somewhat conservative, however you want to frame it, but on the lower end of what people are paying.
So we should be fortunate. I think there's definite empathy in a way for the costs of things or like the struggle that a lot of people are facing.
Yeah.
So I think Ipswich has that kind of a heart. That's one of the reasons that attract me to coming here. Looking ahead, what actually helps stabilize things? Is it growth, exemptions, overrides, better planning, or some combination of all of it?
Probably a little bit of everything, but like for example, I think the planning aspect we are better. We're better at that now than we ever were. Since I've been involved. We actually have a plan. Like we didn't even have a 5-year plan, and we got a grant to do a 5-year plan. And this was more operating, but analogous is the capital side of things. So actually looking out a number of years is a positive. Being cognizant of, is there a burden beyond which you don't want to go? You're actually having a chance to make quality decisions. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be thoughtful and kind of based in some degree of fact. So I think that's a plus. Growth helps you the year that it comes on, but it doesn't necessarily help you long term. So for example, take the Symes project on Linebrook. You got building permits, you got a one-time flush of money that comes in, and then it's in the next year it's in the budget. So you do need government to try to be efficient when you get if they were able to stay the same level of headcount and such with additional growth, maybe that growth is additive, accretive to the town. But the other problem with particularly residential growth is it costs roughly $20,000 to have a student in the Ipswich schools.
Yeah.
So if your taxes are less than $20,000, adding a house actually hurts the town conceptually, meaning it isn't cash flow positive.
It's not paying for itself.
It doesn't pay for itself until they become empty nesters, and then
Right.
they win.
Look,
The
get that
town
kid out
wins.
there and get working, buddy.
Exactly.
That's it. You're 12. You're old enough. Let's go.
So growth is good on the front end. Business growth is great. So like the biolabs addition, that was fantastic for the town. no new people in the schools.
Yeah.
Their assessment of their value of their property goes up. You get permits to build, so that's a win. Commercial development is a win. Is truly a win for the town. Residential development, a little bit less so, less clear cut.
It's like, would it be better to get one company, or would it be better to get 10 small businesses? I mean, or is that just sort of a ridiculous question because you can't define it, the parameters?
No, I mean, I guess the challenge with, I think we talked about earlier, that's where I think we collectively need to, the next thing is, okay, we know we have all these capital projects, we've scoped them out, they look like this. The next thing is, what does the economy of Ipswich look like, and what do you incentivize and how?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So downtown is downtown. There's a limited amount of space. You want to have it vibrant, so maybe you do zone things or think about what types of businesses you want down there. Is there stuff on Route 1? We should have a cohesive, sitting in the seat that I know I said, you should have a cohesive economic strategy, and then things are going to change, but you should at least be thinking about, I don't know, with smaller businesses, it's like you kind of need a hub.
Yeah.
You need some, if you had a bunch of, like in Beverly, a bunch of breweries around one block, and so it's, they kind of work together and draw people to it for a reason.
Right.
We would need to think about why are those people going to be coming to Ipswich? Is it the beach? Is it that type of thing? Then how could you incentivize businesses that support that, that economy, those types of that type of activity? A big one would be great. A question with big is where does it go? Because despite having the fourth biggest land mass in the state, I don't know how much is actually developable. But the Route 1 corridor would be something.
Okay, it's a lot of marshland.
Right. A lot of.
But
so growth would be great, particularly business growth. Not exactly sure what that would look like, but that's something we should be studying. We as a community. Overrides, we'll need them, because unless you come up with alternative sources of money, they're going to need money to fund these projects. Again, 10 years is aggressive. I tend to think that's. I think hopefully we're making progress, but I don't know that we can tackle $300 million in 10 years. That seems aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, for a small town.
So making choices. And then exemptions, I think that's something as a society you want to think about. Do you want to try to help people who've been here for their whole lives stay here? I would think the answer is yes. And then the question is, well, how does that dovetail with all these other things that we're trying to make happen?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to get more money for the town, and I called my buddy Jeff, the bookseller. He would not take my calls though.
Yeah, no. My joke is always, if $1 billion fell down from the sky, we could make something happen around here.
I'm telling you, no, I'm sure people would have some reason to say no. They
wouldn't take the gift. It's I want it this way.
It's like life isn't cheap. We all know this, and if you can afford the bills. I always look at it like, for example, we don't have any children, but I want better schools. I think education is the foundation of development for any human being. The more educated you are, the better functioning you are as a society. So who wouldn't want to pay for that?
Especially the education at the times that we're touching the kids, right? I look at broadly, think about AI and all what's going to happen with this and what's going to happen with that.
Yeah.
Well, that transformative, like that K-12 education, where you're in theory teaching them how to think, or in some cases teaching them how to do. So my son's at Whittier right now, so he's learning plumbing.
Yeah.
That might actually be a really good career choice for him. But I think teaching them to the point where they can make that decision or just think critically should be money well spent. Beyond that, is a college education going to be worth $300,000? That's a harder decision to make.
But that's the thing, is that there's lots of articles and talks about how important college is now versus a trade school. There's a shortage of trades people now. A lot of people are going to be hitting retirement over the next 10 years. I saw this article, and they don't have enough people to replace them. Right. Air traffic controllers, another one I heard mentioned not long ago. I think we mentioned this in another episode. I've got a friend who's an air traffic controller who's retired now, and he was saying how terrible how dire the situation is trying to get new people in with the skill set needed.
Right.
It's not there.
No, it's funny. That's why I was saying the critical thinking is what you know on the front end you need, because the jobs of the future aren't necessarily the jobs of the past. So coding was the big thing. Everybody needs to know how to code. Well, now you can vibe code in 10 seconds, and those jobs that would have been, $80,000 to $150,000 jobs aren't existing.
My regular job is a web developer, so I'm totally familiar.
Are you seeing the shift?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because I think that our hope, people of our age, I'm a little bit older than you, is that experience that you need the really high end version. But the problem is, as a society, what do those people coming out of, becoming adults?
Yeah.
Where do they go, and what's that look like?
It's a huge. I feel bad for kids today because the world's changing really fast, and like, what are you going to tap into? Probably AI is a big industry for the future, but that presents its own challenges with the demands on the environment and on electricity for that matter, right? Yeah. So there's a lot there to
unpack. Lots of things. You have lots of episodes to go.
I'm telling you, this is great. I could keep talking about this stuff all day, but I know you've got things to do. Like, we're adults, we have other things to do. But before we leave, there is one other thing that we have to cover. This is the section of the show we call the lightning round. Now,
you didn't prep me for this.
No, I did not, because that's why it's the lightning round. This is where we ask you some very serious, probably very stupid questions, and you just respond with what comes to mind.
There you go.
All right? We could do that. Okay, number 1. Mitigating, instigating, palpitating, or gestating. Which one of these were you doing when you were caught by your mom?
I think instigating is always my word of the year.
Didn't even phase you on that one, huh? Okay. That's good. Okay. True or false? The moon landings were all fake because no cheese samples were ever provided.
Let's go false on that one.
I think I'll agree with you. Okay. All right. Number 3. Clams seem to always stay in their shells. Are they antisocial?
Yes.
Technically, you are correct. This is true. 4. True. Wait, did I miss one? No, true or false? Many Americans are unable to read math because of the Arabic numerals.
False. No
idea. I think it's true because a lot of people can't really deal with math, and you heard the whole controversy about. This is literally, I saw this on Facebook.
Must be true.
They're asking people, do you think should we be using Arabic numerals in school? And they're like, absolutely not. That's crazy. We should be teaching English. I don't think I have to elaborate further.
No.
Number 5. Would you call time travel a pastime?
Yes.
Literally, it is, right? And the final one today, which I just came up with a little while ago. No, that's why it's not on there. Your net worth. Are you self-made, or do you have an uncle who's a Nigerian prince?
Self-made.
That Nigerian prince guy is going to be unhappy.
Yeah. Well, the way with the seniors, scamming is like unbelievably rampant
it's
now.
It's terrible.
Talking about the Nigerian prince.
To go back to serious for a second, you're right. It's a terrible situation with the way that a lot of older people, because they grew up in a world where you could trust somebody who called you.
Right.
People weren't just trying to. Con man was like a TV show, right? It was like not everyone met a con man. It was now it's like just
every day.
Everybody. Not everybody, but I mean it's so terrible. I just not
Nigerian princes. In my past. Now, if we can get the guy who sells books, he can adopt me if you'd like. I'd be okay with that.
Jeff, if you're listening, I know you're not, but if you were, Hey, and by the way, I need a new car. All right. Anyway, but we'll skip that part. So, again, thanks for joining me today,
Great time,
Walter. It was
good
really
conversation.
Informational. But before we close, there's one more piece of context worth sitting with. What Ipswich is experiencing right now didn't appear overnight, and I think we kind of cover this a bit, but I just want to be basically black and white and blatant. For a long time, we just blew it off. Kick the can down the road. How many times have we heard that? It happens, it's happened, it's happening. And this is our comeuppance. This is, down the road is now. It's now. We're at the point we can't ignore the issues facing the town anymore. And I think a lot of people are really just not happy with that, even though we kind of all were involved. Well, I should say, if you didn't, then when I mentioned this before, if you didn't vote, then you can't say a whole lot. And I'm just acknowledging this reality. I'm not really complaining about it. Nobody likes it, sure. But, we all had this chance to address these things over the years. I mean, now we're looking, like I said, $300 million. And, all these things, the schools, one or two schools, what's it going to be, right? I think, personally, it should be two, because I think it's more specific, right? Middle school versus high school or whatever, and there's a lot of proponents and opponents and a lot of reasoning going on.
They're talking elementary schools, 1 versus 2.
Oh, is it? Okay,
That's
sorry.
where it is. So it's,
Yeah, you're right.
and
Smart.
again, I think there's layers. I think good conversation across the table with people that you can actually agree or disagree with is fine. And that's what my hope is, that we get back to those places.
I think that's important, and I agree with you. But here's the great example, kick it down the road, was the public safety building. Okay, they didn't like the design, so we hemmed and hawed about this. Who didn't really know in the end they were going to do it one way or the other, right? Who cares if it's red or it's gray? I mean, now we're looking at at least a $14 million increase in the cost.
Right.
Because we kept hemming and hawing about it. It just, these things, address it at the time, when the process is happening, when the design is put out. Immediately, the board or whoever should have said, okay, it doesn't fit the context of the town. If that was the value. I think
the problem is that's where people need to, you talk about people being involved. That's what really needs, because they decided that wasn't important. And whether it was or wasn't,
Well, we found out it was.
It was, and now you're paying the price. So like, that's a shame, because I remember sitting at town meeting, up there, having somebody say, "We're never going to come back for any money." And I remember I was sitting next to your friend, and I hit him on the leg, and I said, "I never say never," because
that's right.
I've learned that through my years of experience.
But that's the thing, right? You could say, "All right, accept it as it is, and wait 10 years, and then you can renovate it." When you have more money, but now,
or have the architect make it different. The architect, because I don't want to, he still works for you. I think to some degree, again, the agency was the word I used earlier.
There was obviously some involvement with the people who are paying or who were managing the payment. So yeah, that should happen. I mean, anyway,
But to your point, we've got a 100-year-old firehouse and a
100-year firehouse, right? And these things aren't getting any better, right? And then beyond that, it's like, who wants? You're going to complain about a water treatment facility, replacing it? I mean, what's more important than clean drinking water and clean waste management? And then we have all the other problems. I mean, the infrastructure challenges in this town. That's what happens when you have a 400-year-old town.
That's true.
It's like we got pipes still from the 1880s, 1890s. It's way beyond time, but nobody did anything, and now finally we have to do something. It's like there's no more. Can't kick it any further because the wall's here.
Yeah, and I think, again, what our hope is the strategic planning committee and everything, the tri-boards, is that they're doing that in a way that tries to be, conscious of the impact that it has on people. But no, some of these things are critical right away, has to happen things. And I think that prioritization is something that should be discussed. But, again, there's not a lot of fluff on that list of 300 million. Really,
no,
because I was there for a lot of how the creation of that list
could have been Could have been 286 million. Just saying.
It could be. Just vote no on that last 15 million.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? Hey, you know what? I like the gray wall versus the brick wall. Whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever
that's
that is.
true.
It's more than that, obviously. But I mean.
But no, that's a good example, of something where it costs us a lot. It's costing us a lot more, even on the elementary school front. Not doing that school project in 2017 or whatever it was for $60 million instead of whatever it's going to be now.
Which was renovating the current.
No, they were going to do brand new. They were going to do a brand new one school at Doyon.
Holy cow!
For $67 million, with the state paying half. And now we'll be at a number that's at least double that. So, to your point, kicking it down the curb is a problem. Whatever you believe the approach is, I think, again, talking through, having a process that people trust, and then coming to something consensus that isn't necessarily what you want or what I want, but is something that we can get done. Again, why do you leave a board sometimes? Because you're not feeling you're getting enough stuff done.
That was a consensus among other people who I've talked to who are on the board and who left. Yeah. Because, you get tired of hitting your head against the wall. And then when the right things come along, when the things that really should be done, then you get public outcry because it didn't happen fast enough. I mean, which is where we are, right? Yep. So thank you again. It's just fantastic, and you should come back again. I'm sure we get so much more we can blab on about. That's good stuff, though. Good info.
Yep. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So if you're sitting there asking yourself, hey, how come John hasn't asked me to be on the show? It's because I don't know you. But you know how you could know me if you want to be on the show is go to saneestate.com or email guest@saneestate.com. Tell us why you want to be on the show. We're always looking for new guests, butchers, bakers, rule breakers, and fakers, liars and criers, and even French friars. Is there a thing like that? Well, let's say a guy's from Paris and he comes in to work the grill. All right, I just made that one up. Owners, moaners, zoners, artists, civic leaders, historians, volunteers, anyone helping shape life here in Ipswich. I want to talk to you. You can bring the story and I'll bring the questions. It's pretty simple. And you can have a nice, cool conversation like Walter and I just had, where we bitched at each other off camera. A few insults were flown. But hey, we all made up, right? Nah, Walter's not that kind of guy. He's very, very, very nice, like me. But hey, if you come on the show, I promise I'll be nice to you, unless you're certain people who I will not mention. Anyway, okay. This has been the Sane Estate. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and most of all, stay sane.